We're being recorded. When that happens, can you please just confirm your name, your job title, your company, and that you're happy to be recorded?
Yeah, so I'm aware I'm being recorded. My name is Carlos Martin. I am the CEO of BlueFloat Energy. I'm keen on starting whenever you want.
Perfect, that's great. Hi there, and welcome to episode 19 of the OGB Energy Let's Talk Transition series of podcasts. I'm Murray Melhuish, the founder of ANAC Consulting. We support companies and their entry into the offshore wind industry. I'm delighted to be joined with me today. I'm delighted to have with me today Carlos Martin Rivas, Chief Executive of BlueFloat Energy. Hey, Carlos.
Hey, good morning. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Good. Hey, it's great to have you with us. Carlos, can you introduce yourself and your business, please?
Yes, I'm Carlos Martin. I am the CEO and founder of BlueFloat Energy. We are a global dedicated offshore wind developer, headquartered in Madrid, in Spain, but with a global outreach and a global team. Mm-hmm.
Brilliant. And, a global team. Tell us a little bit more about the footprint you've got, Carlos.
Yes. So we were designed as a global outfit from the outset. We consider that offshore wind is really a global industry from many different points of view. And our plan from the beginning was to have a global presence. That's why we started our business by setting a footprint in 3 continents, in Europe, Americas, and APAC, and creating a team that is very diverse in very different ways. But one of them is definitely in terms of nationalities. We have more than 20 nationalities in our team, which I think is one of our strengths.
Great. And so people on 3 continents, can you give us a flavor for your projects?
Yes. So we are definitely quite advanced in our developments in Europe. UK is our probably most advanced market today. We have a portfolio of projects totaling 3.5 gigawatts in that country. We are arguably the market leader in floating wind. We have a presence in France. We are participating in the upcoming floating wind tenders. We have a leadership position in Italy, and we have also a very strong presence in Spain and in Portugal. Outside Europe, APAC is our biggest region. We are developing what could be the first floating wind project in Taiwan. We have participated in the first offshore tender in Australia. I'm planning to participate in the 3 new tenders planned in the country. We are pioneers in New Zealand and also participating in the development of the offshore wind industry in the Philippines. And finally, in the Americas, we have a presence in Colombia, where we see the offshore wind developing and probably being the first offshore wind market in Latin America.
Wow, so it really is a global business, isn't it? That's amazing. And
absolutely.
So the business has been founded for the floating wind industry. And tell me, Carlos, why does the wind industry matter?
Yeah, so it definitely matters. It matters because we have a challenge as a global society. We need to address the climate emergency, and that word is relevant because we're not talking about the challenge of climate change any longer. We're talking about an emergency, and we are seeing this almost by the day. Record temperatures reached in both the northern hemisphere this summer and in the southern hemisphere in the winter, which is many times forgotten. So we need to react quickly, and we need to react with all the weapons we have at hand. And wind is definitely a key weapon that humankind has at its disposal, both onshore wind and offshore wind. But offshore wind will play a major role in addressing climate change. Why? Because there's vast resources available for renewable production at sea. This resource is more predictable, heavier, stronger, and more stable than onshore. And many times that wind resource is closer to the load centers. So there's many reasons why we need to harness the offshore wind resource that is at disposal across the globe. And that's why this is a global industry, is because the challenge is global and the need for renewable power is a common feature in many, many different markets across the globe. So it definitely matters. And probably one of the challenges we have as an industry is to convey the message to societies that this is a force for good, and this is something needed in order to tackle our global climate change emergency.
Great, that's a really good summary. Thank you. Tell me why have you decided to focus on floating wind? Why does floating wind matter? Where does it come in versus fixed bottom wind?
Absolutely. So a first thing to comment is that as BlueFloat Energy, we are experts and probably one of the market leaders in floating wind, but we don't do only floating wind. We also do fixed bottom wind whenever we see the opportunity, and we have several fixed bottom developments worldwide. But the reason why we are called BlueFloat is because we do believe that floating wind will be a key ingredient in this future development of offshore wind. When you look at the different areas available for offshore wind development worldwide, you realize very quickly that deeper waters is more the norm than the exception. Actually, shallow waters are more the exception globally. It's a little bit easier to harness because the technology has matured faster in fixed bottom, and that's why most of the developments today are fixed bottom developments. But as I said, there's more potential worldwide in deeper waters that require floating wind to capture those opportunities. And you can see these in existing mature markets like the UK, France, or Taiwan that they are already addressing deeper waters and exploring deeper water areas. And also in new geographies that need floating wind to develop. Good examples being the west coast of the US, but also the east coast, Japan, or other markets like where we are present, like New South Wales in Australia or New Zealand, or of course all the Mediterranean basin that has a very brilliant future in offshore wind, but where the vast majority of the developments will be floating wind.
Great. And remind me, Carlos, how long have you been in the wind industry?
So personally, I've been working in the wind industry for almost 20 years, initially as a management consultant, and then at EDP Renewables that I joined back in 2010. Within offshore wind specifically, I started working in 2013 at EDP Renewables, where I became project director for the WindFloat Atlantic project, which was one of the first floating wind developments worldwide, which eventually became the first floating project to secure a bank financing structure, which was a key milestone in the development of the floating wind industry.
Great. And in that 20-year period, Carlos, what are the key milestones that you've seen in the offshore industry?
Well, I've seen the whole development of the offshore wind industry from almost its outset. I saw its development from what was perceived as a niche technology in very special markets that didn't want to see onshore wind development because of its visual impact, like the UK. And I saw the transformation from these early market developments into a mainstream technology that is cost competitive against other sources of renewables, and that has become a mainstream technology that is being has moved from these early market developments in UK, Belgium, Netherlands, Germany, or China, moving into many new markets for offshore wind, where actually BlueFloat has been participating in kickstarting those markets. And we can now see more than 25 markets worldwide embracing offshore wind as a key ingredient in their energy mix.
Great. And obviously, offshore wind is important at the national and an international, in fact, a global level. And with that in mind, what role do government policies and regulations play in shaping the offshore wind industry?
Yeah. So governments are key, of course, in kickstarting and developing offshore wind. And that's because this is a key part of a national energy policy. There's some key success factors that governments need to follow in order to develop a sustainable and ambitious offshore wind industry. The first one is defining high ambitions in the long term for offshore wind. Scale matters in this industry, and defining important long-term goals is, of course, key to attract investment in the long run. So these long-term plans are of course critical, and it's very important for governments to avoid the temptation to capture value very quickly, but putting at risk the long-term sustainability of the industry. So one key example here is some governments have tried to auction sea leases at very high prices. We can understand why, but this is not necessarily good for the long-term sustainability of the industry, because the price paid for those leases eventually translates into higher prices for power. So long-term plans is a very important aspect. Predictability is another very important aspect. It's very important that governments deliver on their plans. We've seen this in few markets, unfortunately, but in some key markets. The example I always use is Australia. Australia has been fast in developing its plans and has been very good in meeting its targets in terms of when a regulation will be in place, when renewable energy zones will be called, and when the tenders will happen. And that gives a lot of comfort to developers like us in making commitments for these markets. A third key element is a reasonable risk allocation. It's very important that regulation allows for rewarding developers as they meet certain targets, certain deadlines in the development of the offshore wind farms. That gives an incentive for the risking projects and an incentive for developers to increase their level of commitment as they progress along the development process in any given project. And overall, when governments focus on ensuring the long-term cost effectiveness of the offshore wind industry, we see the market flourishing. And there's a good set of countries around the globe. I talked about Australia, they're just starting, but other markets like the UK have already delivered very significant capacity. Not easy, of course, and they are addressing very important challenges, but when the key objective is the long-term development of the industry at as low a cost as possible, there's where we see the markets delivering on its targets.
Great, and I think I already know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway, Carlos. So, you're a chief exec with a global remit. Do you see a best practice in any one country in terms of the support for the offshore wind industry?
Well, it's difficult to mention just one country. There's a good set of countries that have done quite a number of things right, and that's why they are developing faster than others. But of course, the one we like to mention is the UK and Scotland in particular, when it comes to developing floating wind. It probably ticks many of the boxes. Maybe not all of them, of course. It's difficult to do everything right, but there's quite a number of things that the UK is doing right in order to secure the long-term sustainability of an offshore wind industry. First thing is that the country has set long-term ambitious goals in offshore wind in general and floating wind in particular. And it has not just set ambitious goals, but put the action behind the words by leasing large sea areas for floating wind. And that's particularly true for Scotland, that has developed what we can see as a reliable and well thought and rigorous marine spatial planning. that has later translated into the lease of significant areas for offshore wind development and floating wind development in particular. It has set both long-term plans for commercial development of offshore wind, but also what we could see as stepping stones, pre-commercial projects of different sorts. We have seen it more recently with the INTOC lease round, which has complemented the ScotWind lease round, which was more focused on commercial projects. I think the country has avoided the temptation to force local content enforcement, but at the same time has provided the means for developers to make voluntary commitments in terms of local content development, which I think is a good balance between allowing for leveraging the global supply chain, while at the same time ensuring that the country can benefit from the development of a local industry. The focus on capability building has been another key item, and we can see this in many different ways, but it comes from capability building in more the operational skills, but also in more innovative or engineering skills. And there's good examples in the country of training centers and universities becoming role models for many different countries around the globe. And I can cite, for example, the University of Strathclyde being a good reference when it comes to engineering and innovation capabilities in offshore wind. Other aspects that we could mention about how to support the development of our local offshore wind industry, like the support for ports, which is a big topic today in the UK and Scotland in particular. The nomination of green free ports, where BlueFloat has been actually very active in supporting the candidacy from Port of Cardiff Firth is a good example of that. And the grants program that is currently in place and that we hope will be expanded to support the transformation of ports so that they can support the development of commercial scale offshore and specifically floating wind projects. These are other examples of how a country can help the development of this industry. And we can see actually other countries around the globe following similar paths. And I cited Australia before as another example of a country that is developing offshore wind quite effectively. But there's other examples, of course, with different models. Taiwan, I mentioned before, but also France and others doing quite a good job in developing offshore wind.
Great, brilliant. And just thinking about those Scottish projects, Carlos, can you give us, remind us, tell us about the projects? How big are they? When do you expect them to be producing power? What type of projects are they?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, Scotland is to some extent a bit of our home market at BlueFloat Energy. The ScotWind lease round was, of course, a major turning point for the company after setting up our operations in 2020. The result of the ScotWind release round, with 3 projects being awarded to our consortia. We're working in partnerships with Renantis, formerly Fark Renewables, across all of our portfolio in the UK, and with Ørsted in the Stromar project in Scotland. So the results of this lease round was a bit of a surprise in the market, but a confirmation that as BlueFloat Energy, we were developing a sound strategy and we were developing a very strong team in floating wind. It's fair to say that today we are one of the leaders, if not the leader, in floating wind development in the country, with 5 projects on development resulting from the ScotWind lease round and INTOC, 3.5 gigawatts of floating wind capacity in the development, and with the ambition to grow further, hopefully with the intention to participate in the upcoming Celtic Sea lease round. So all this capacity is not just a result of what we see very strong and rigorous work from a technical and project development perspective. It is a result, of course, of very strong partnership and a very strong team, but it allows to develop this market with a lot of ambition. I think we have the critical mass to consider certain developments and the supply chain and the technology that will allow a fast track development of our projects, but also a very efficient one and cost-effective one. There are certain things you can consider with this portfolio of projects that is very difficult to consider with smaller developments in terms of investing in the supply chain, in investing in ports, reaching critical mass when it comes to developing a very cost-effective supply chain so that projects can be developed and implemented on a timely manner, but also in a very cost-effective manner. So I'm very happy to see that our developments are progressing fast. We are currently, as we speak, conducting site investigation across our 3 projects in ScotWind, also in our 2 INTOG projects. We have installed floating lidars or in the process of installing floating lidars in all of them. And we are progressing fast in preparation for submitting our scoping documents to be submitted before the end of the year across our portfolio of projects. So progressing and fast and hoping to be ready for CFD tender, hopefully by 2026, as early as 2026. We're also very engaged with the supply chain so that we can deliver on our commitments in the supply chain development statement, and also in securing a supply chain that can deliver these projects.
Great. And when you're delivering these projects all over the world, how do you approach community engagement? How do you get the buy-in from local communities wherever those projects are?
Yeah, so that's a very key aspect of the offshore wind industry, because of course we want to make sure that projects get the support from the local communities. It's also very important for the long-term sustainability of this industry. We don't want to just install one project and that's it. We want to make sure that this is a long-term industry that sees new projects coming after the first developments. And for that, engaging with local communities and securing their support is absolutely critical. That's not an easy task, and it's one in which we spend a lot of time and effort at every single level of the organization. And including myself, of course, I'm very engaged into those efforts across our different geographies. So what are the key principles we follow when it comes to local communities and stakeholder engagement? The first one is to start very early in our engagements. We don't wait to have a lease secured. We don't wait to be ready for progressing in the implementation of our projects. Way before we see a legislation implemented, we see tenders happening and so on and so forth, we start addressing the local communities. We like to be very transparent in our developments and present those developments to the local communities in order to build trust. Trust is about sharing plans. It's about being very transparent. It's about explaining, being very educational in our approach, but also it's about listening. And I always insist with our teams that besides being proactive and explaining our plans, we need to be very good and intense listeners, because local communities know much more about the local environment than we do, despite the fact that we always partner with local developers that have a long experience in addressing local project development. There's so much you can learn from engaging with local communities. They've been working there for many years. They know which are the most visible sites. They know what are the activities which are being conducted in and around our proposed developments, and their feedback is very, very important to us. a very good example, coming back to Scotland, is the engagement we are conducting with the different communities there. We have an exclusive partnership with Energy for All, which is a global reference in terms of community engagement. They have a very long track record in securing support from local communities in onshore wind, and they were very excited about extending that experience into offshore wind. That was a key part of our application, both for ScotWind and for INDOC, and I think it was a key factor to our success in these tenders. It was very interesting to see how they approach this, because the first question that we asked them is, okay, how do you translate community engagement to offshore wind? What is the local community in offshore wind? Which is far from being obvious, because in onshore wind it's probably easier. You have an area of influence of an onshore wind farm, but in offshore wind is more diffuse. And the answer was very interesting. They told us, we don't know. We don't know what is the local community. So because we don't know, what we're going to do is to ask. So they went out and asked local communities what they consider to be community from an offshore wind perspective. And that's an engagement which is still ongoing, but the first feedback is that the community could be the whole country, the whole Scotland can be the community. But there's an aspiration in Scotland to be involved and participate in offshore wind development, no matter whether you can see the wind farms. Most of them, we cannot see them because they're far away, but they definitely want to be involved as a community. So it's a very interesting perspective, and it's a new perspective. There's a lot of innovation that needs to come into offshore wind, and not least from a local community perspective. And I would like to also mention very specifically the indigenous communities that we already involving very heavily in some of our countries. In all the countries where indigenous communities exist and are key part of the local stakeholder engagement. To cite some examples, Australia, where I've been recently in this last month of July, was traveling around the country, also in New Zealand, Aotearoa, the name in Maori, which is very important because the Maori communities, the so-called iwi communities, are very involved. And in both countries, to cite a couple of examples, but the same applies to Colombia with the Wayuu communities in Guajira, or the First Nations in Canada. All those communities have a very deep sense of involvement and a sense of protection of the environment, of the cultural heritage, which dates back from many centuries. The indigenous communities in Australia, so-called traditional owners, are considered the longest and oldest culture in the surviving culture in the world. Their presence in the area dates back from as long as 40,000 years, and their involvement in the local environment is very deep. So that particular type of engagement with indigenous communities is particularly relevant. It's very interesting, very rewarding when you engage with them, and we spend a lot of time. We spend a lot of time engaging, listening, understanding their concerns, the way they propose us to look at these involvements. I spent a very interesting meeting, a couple of hours, with the Warimi nation in the Hunter region in Australia this last summer. And it was a very good learning exercise where you realize that us humans are part of the environment, they talk about Mother Nature in a very true meaning. They believe that we should consider the nature our mother, and whatever we do to nature is the same thing that we'll do to our own mother. So when it comes to installing an offshore wind farm, we're doing this for the right purpose, to help saving the climate and the earth, but we need to do it in such a way that protects what we could consider our own mother. No? So this type of engagement and influences our approach to offshore wind development, and we take this very seriously and very much into consideration.
Wow, so it sounds like a real investment by the business in local community relations. That's great to hear. Now, Carlos, you mentioned CFD earlier, and I thought it was interesting that one of the major developers here in the UK recently announced that they had no need to wait for CFD for their two fixed bottom wind farms. How long do you think it'll be before we get to that same position in floating wind?
Yeah, so I think that announcement is basically the reflection of a trend that we have seen happening in the last few years in traditional fixed bottom offshore wind. We've seen the first corporate PPAs being signed in different countries like Taiwan, like Germany, like the UK. And it's the reflection of, on the one hand, the cost competitiveness of fixed bottom offshore wind, a regulation that allows for this type of CPPA arrangements, an interest from energy-intensive industries, new industries in many ways, like data centers or semiconductor industries, being more and more interested in securing long-term arrangement for green energy supply. And it's very encouraging to see that traditional fixed bottom offshore wind is less and less reliant on support schemes from governments. So what can we expect in floating wind? Well, I think that's a trend that we can expect happening in floating wind, and it will happen. Now, one word of caution I always give is you don't want to force things to happen too fast, too quickly. We cannot ask floating wind to, as a new technology, to happen faster than what we have seen in solar, in onshore wind, in fixed bottom offshore wind in the past. Floating wind is developing faster in terms of cost competitiveness than other industries. The cost of floating wind is lower than what the cost of fixed bottom offshore wind was when fixed bottom offshore wind had the same installed capacity as floating wind today. So it's already a good starting point, and costs will go down. There's many factors that makes us believe that the costs will go down quite fast, but you need to allow that development to happen. Globally speaking, floating offshore wind is 10 years behind fixed bottom wind in terms of technology development. So globally speaking, you should expect these developments in terms of corporate PPAs happening, but it will take a few years, probably between 8 and 10 years before that happens. In the meantime, you need to let the market develop as it happened in other renewable technologies, with support from governments, with defining long-term plans, and with the right stepping stones in the meantime that allow for installed capacity to grow and for costs to go down as it happened in other technologies.
Great. So 8 to 10 years. Well, we'll look forward to seeing how that develops, and of course, hopefully, we can, as an industry, we can even beat that.
That's what we're here for. Hopefully, they will be able to beat that. The only thing is, don't try to run too fast, because again, it would be unfair to ask a new technology to mature much faster than others. Of course, we are ambitious. We want to make the right things for this to happen fast, but with the right level of the right milestones and the right level of safety and security.
Brilliant. And just thinking back to the global picture, Carlos, this is a market globalizing quickly and developing very quickly indeed. What are the factors that you consider when you're considering a new market for investment?
Yeah. So one important aspect about BlueFloat Energy is that from the outset, we set as our key mission to expand the footprint of offshore wind globally. And that we have done in two different ways. One is by approaching new areas in mature markets, by developing floating wind projects. So in areas that were not initially considered for offshore wind development, in countries like Taiwan, France, or the UK, or alternatively by helping new markets develop as new offshore wind markets. So we have been pioneers in the developing offshore wind in countries like Spain, like Australia, like New Zealand, and so on and so forth, or Colombia. And that's because we believe that, again, offshore wind is a major driver for decarbonization globally. Now, we had to be selective in which markets to target. There's a few factors that we always take into consideration when selecting which markets to develop. You need to have a strong wind resource, of course. That's a key factor for competitiveness versus other technologies. And the fit for offshore wind in the overall country energy mix is a major factor that we take into account. There needs to be a reason for developing offshore wind. We don't want just to put megawatts in our portfolio. Every single project we develop needs to have a means, needs to have a sense. There needs to be a good explanation from an economic, from a social, from a decarbonization point of view. And I'm very proud of being able to explain for each of our projects in our portfolio why that project makes sense. Hopefully, it will be us developing and executing it. But even if it doesn't, somebody will do it because it makes sense. So that's an very important factor. We're also looking for scale and volume in every region. We believe that offshore wind will develop in regional clusters, like the North Sea or the Atlantic in Europe, but other clusters are being developed in APAC, in the east coast of the US, in the Mediterranean, and we look for scale in each of these regions. I was talking about Scotland and the UK before. Well, we are very lucky and happy to have already reached this necessary scale for a successful and cost-effective development in that region. And we're looking to do the same in the other regions, like Mediterranean or APAC. Of course, regulation is a major factor, so we're looking for governments that have a rigorous approach in developing regulation for offshore wind. Of course, we want to see regulation developing fast, but more important than fast is rigor. And we want to see governments developing a sound and reasonable regulation. And actually, we spend also a lot of time and effort in supporting governments in providing examples of how the other markets are developing this industry, and providing our input into how we see regulation happening to support this industry. And finally, probably the last thing we look for is the right partners, local partners, to help us developing our presence in a given market, and sufficient and reasonable level of competition. We have decided not to pursue certain markets simply because there was too many competitors already in that market. Probably Ireland is one of them. Will it happen? Yes. Does it have a sound regulatory regime? Yes. Is it too competitive? Oh, yes. Probably one of the markets with the highest competition compared to the potential of the market in the world. No?
Well, that's
so
interesting.
We decided not to address this market.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that before. That brings me to challenges, Carlos. These are massive multi-billion-pound projects being undertaken all over the world. What are the main challenges to delivering them? Yeah.
So, well, of course, financing is one of them. We are lucky to count on a very strong financial partner, our shareholder, 547 Energy, part of the broader Quantum Energy Partners group, which is a very established and strong investment firm in the broader energy industry. We also count on this partnership strategy that allows us to co-develop projects with other partners. But beyond financing, there's a number of factors that I think are very important. Some of them, we talked about them. Social acceptance, social license is very, very important. That's why we invest so much early on in our developments. Scale at regional level, we also commented about that. It's important to secure the right level of scale because there's significant investments that need to happen in the supply chain, which is many times a regional one, and suppliers will invest in supply chain to the extent that they see a long-term development in the industry and sufficient scale. technical capabilities. One of the key features of BlueFloat Energy is a very, very strong technical team. We probably have the largest combined experience in floating wind, in executing floating wind projects in the market, with a team with very different backgrounds across the supply chain, developers, turbine manufacturers, EPC contractors, and so on and so forth. So all those elements, I believe, are absolutely key to secure a sound and reasonable development in each of our projects. So that's where we spend a lot of time and effort in our developments.
Right, I'm just going to have a glass of water. I'm thirsty.
Eventually, it's all about people. No? You want to have the right people that are able to face the many challenges that you many times experience. And we have personally, I experienced that in the BlueFloat Atlantic project when I was working for EDP Renewables. It's especially when it comes to pioneer projects like these ones, you need to be able to address many challenges along the way. And the way to address them is by having creative and perseverant people in the team.
And, let's think about people just for a second there, Carlos. How do you, in your experience, what's the secret to finding and keeping those best people for your business?
Yeah. So at the end of the day, it's very basic things. Is creating an environment where it's pleasant to work, where you foster collaboration, you give people responsibility, you trust people, and we are lucky at BlueFloat Energy to have created such an environment. We have probably one of the lowest turnovers in the industry, and that's because I think people are happy to work in a company that has an impact in the industry, that where people have the capacity not just to have their landmark in how projects or how the whole company develops, but that probably goes beyond the company. It also has a certain influence on how the whole market is developing, specifically in floating wind. As I said, very strong collaboration inside the team, and generally speaking, a place where I think a whole set of diverse people from very different perspectives. We talked about nationalities. We can also talk about gender and backgrounds. Like to work. We had our annual meeting in June in Spain. We had all the team coming from different parts of the world, and it was just amazing. You didn't have to prepare. Of course, we prepared a very intense program. But beyond what we prepared, it was very natural that people came along together very well. People hadn't met before came along very well and continue to collaborate when they go back to their countries. So that's the type of environment you like to create, and it's so powerful when you prepare for a tender, for example. It's so powerful to see people collaborating and putting all their effort to support any country in delivering the best application that we can build. So yeah, I think it's all about all these elements that creates the right dynamic in a team.
Cool. Carlos, when you're delivering these projects, is the strategy for delivery set by your team in the center, or is it set by the regions? How does that work?
Well, as I said, it's a very collaborative effort, so everybody contributes to that. But generally speaking, we put a lot of weight on the country organizations when it comes to how to develop projects. It's them leading the preparation for tender application, for example, and subsequently they take the lead in conducting all the development consenting work. So everything related with market development, consenting, stakeholder engagement is led by the local organization, but with a very strong support from our corporate organization. We do have a corporate organization in all those matters that allows for leveraging experience from other markets, best practices, and so on and so forth. When it comes to technical supply chain, this is managed essentially centrally. Same thing with a lot of involvement from the local teams. But we believe that scale, regional critical mass, and global knowledge is very important at the technical level. And that's why the central technical organization has a more prominent role when it comes to developing technical solutions, when it comes to engaging with engineering firms or with technology providers globally.
Right, and in terms of the supply chain pyramid that supports BlueFloat, how many direct suppliers would you expect to have, and for what sorts of goods and services, and then how many other suppliers in other tiers?
Yeah, so we see a number of packages that will have to be well thought as such as packages when it comes to delivering our projects. Probably nothing strange there. VDG, delivery and integration, will definitely be one of them. Platform, substructures, design, engineering and construction will definitely be another one. Transport and installation, mooring in floating wind, electrical equipment, substation, inter-array and export cables will be another one. Now, as a company, we want to be able to deliver on all these packages either as EPC packages or as a multi-contract strategy. And that means incorporating the right teams, which is an ongoing process to be able to deliver a multi-contract strategy, and also engaging with the right suppliers early on. And already today, we are directly engaging with EPC contractors, but also with the different parts of the supply chain, let it be turbine manufacturers, ports, fabrication companies, technology providers, engineering firms, component suppliers like mooring, anchors, cables, substations, and so on and so forth, because we need to have a direct understanding of the key developments that are needed, especially for floating wind, but also for fixed bottom. Where are the bottlenecks? Where it's important to secure capacity early on, cranes, training, you name it. There's so many elements which are going to be critical. We count on partners from an EPC contracting point of view, but we're also engaging directly to help developing the right capabilities and to engage with the right key elements of the supply chain early on.
And how about technology? I mean, technology must be moving forward incredibly quickly given the growth of the industry and the timescales we're under. What are the technologies that you see as being pivotal? Sorry, I'll ask that question again. What are the questions you see as being pivotal for the continued expansion of the industry?
I think you need to ask which technologies. I think you ask which questions. Need to rephrase it again, sorry.
Sorry, what are the technologies that you see as being pivotal to the continued expansion of the industry?
Yeah, so offshore wind in general and floating wind specifically are fast evolving industries, and there's many ways in which new technologies are helping addressing challenges, helping reducing costs, and helping reducing risks. We talk about cost, but many times it's also about optimizing the risks in projects. So the list will be huge, but just to cite a few of them, turbine technology is of course evolving very fast. We've seen turbines getting bigger over time in a crazy race towards bigger and bigger turbines. Most likely what we will see in the next few years is probably a stabilization or a slowdown in that process. Turbine manufacturers need to make money. They need to optimize their current technology platforms. And I think for the whole industry, it will be positive that they keep optimizing their turbines, but probably less in terms of making them bigger and bigger, and more in terms of optimizing fabrication, optimizing logistics, so that costs could continue going down, but due to other factors that just size and scale. Digital twins, sensors, predictive maintenance, optimization of the supply chain, optimization of the elevation means are other aspects related with turbines, which are very important to keep track on. Foundations is definitely another one, especially in floating wind, but not only in floating wind. In fixed bottom, you see deep fixed bottom foundation technologies which allow to address water depths of 60-70 meters being developed, XXL monopiles, and so on and so forth. But in floating wind, of course, is where you see more innovation coming in. No? There's more than 100 floating wind concepts out there in the market, and as BlueFloat, one of the key elements in which we dedicate out of effort is on analyzing all these technologies and filtering them out to select those that we believe are more suited from a cost and a risk perspective and a deliverability, scalability, industrialization perspective to allow to deliver our projects. No? So there's where we see a lot of innovation coming in, but also the need for consolidation, and we believe that consolidation will happen very soon. Every floating technology requires strong support from turbine manufacturers, and turbine manufacturers just have capacity to support a few of them. There's just so many engineers in those companies are available, so they cannot support all the technologies which are being developed. Those technologies that can secure the support from turbine manufacturers are those which will be in better position to win this race. But of course, as developers, we are very much involved in that process and work very close with turbine manufacturers to understand their priorities, but also on providing feedback to them, which is something they appreciate very much, so that they can make the right choices. Apart from these, out of innovation is needed in cables, especially dynamic cables for floating wind, mooring equipment, installation means, O&M, and so on and so forth. So yeah, the reason I was commenting we are confident on costs going down is because innovation opportunities exist across the whole supply chain and should allow to keep the current downward trend in cost reduction in the future.
Great. And Carlos, there's no doubt that you're one of the leaders of the energy transition. You're running a global business delivering multi-billion-pound projects. How do you get to be chief executive of such a business? Take us through your career and what were the pivotal moments?
Yeah. So at the end of the day, when looking backwards, you realize that every experience in your life, if you manage to learn from them, counts in defining you as a leader in this industry. There's three key experiences that I learned from. I work as a management consultant, and these probably gave me the rigor and the strategic mindset to think about how to shape a company and how to understand the global trends and the global priorities for a successful strategy. Of course, my experience at EDP Renewables was key to learn from the offshore wind industry and floating wind in particular, from a project development, but also from a technical point of view. Being an engineer as training, I think that was a key learning exercise. And not that I'm a technical expert, because I'm not, but I think I have some of the skills that needed to incorporate the technical aspects into the overall strategy. And then a more recent experience in a Spanish multinational, not specifically in the energy business, also helped me in developing business management skills, in terms of people skills, and so on and so forth. But probably the most important experience was about being able to create a very effective team, being able to develop the right environment to attract people, to attract talent, and to make that talent flourish in the right environment. And that has been the success behind BlueFloat Energy so far, is really a team of people who is definitely very smart and very experienced, but is also working very effectively. And that's probably the reason for successes like Scotwind or Intok, and our fast development across the globe. No?
Brilliant. And what advice, Carlos, would you give to the young Carlos just setting out on your career? What would you say to yourself if you could?
There's a few aspects that I think are important when we're looking backwards. And if I had to tell somebody in its early phases of development in their career, first thing is follow your passion. No, at the end of the day, we are driven by passion, and when you really believe in what you do and you're passionate about your day-to-day, things tend to work better than if you're just trying to follow what the path that has been set by other people. No, so follow your instincts. Follow your passion is definitely one of them. A second one I mentioned is make sure you work with the right people. Of course, with smart people, with people you can learn from, but also with people equally passionate about what they do. And we try to work with a very diverse set of people. Diversity is, I think, a key source of strength for any organization, of course, for BlueFloat Energy as well. And it comprises many different aspects. Gender diversity is definitely one of our strengths. There's the energy industry is unfortunately not a diverse one from a gender perspective, but there's definitely very, very strong talent. And I think one of the key aspects we've been able to do right in BlueFloat Energy is to attract female talent. We have very, very strong female colleagues in the company. We're probably not yet there in terms of being a fully equal company, but we are in the process of ensuring that there's also female talent at senior level of organization. But it's definitely a key source of talent and a key source of strength. International diversity is very important as well. It's important to have a global mentality, being open to work on the very different environments, because globality is definitely a key source of strength across different industries, but definitely in the offshore wind industry. Curiosity is another one, and perseverance. There's a sentence I like is sometimes you win and sometimes you only learn. But it's important to learn. So don't expect things to happen the right way all the time. Sometimes you make mistakes. Sometimes you don't achieve your goals. It's okay. It would be realistic to believe that you always will win and do everything perfect. What is important is to learn from past mistakes, no? And you need to be humbled. So yeah, being humble is probably the last point I will highlight, because it's the only way to learn and the only way to do things better every day.
Brilliant. That's some brilliant advice there, I think, for young people. Something we should all think about. And yeah, I think that'll resonate with a lot of people. So thank you, Carlos. Now, Carlos, in each episode, we ask our guests to set a question for the next guest, without, of course, knowing who they're going to be. And in the last episode, we met with Bruce Hall. He's Chief Exec Officer at Onyx Insight, the predictive analytics specialist, and he left this question for you. How are you driving skills development to ensure a dynamic workforce to support the energy transition and the wind energy? Sorry, I'm going to ask that again. How are you driving skills development to ensure a dynamic workforce to support the energy transition and the wind industry specifically?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think it's a very good question, especially in a new industry like offshore wind and floating wind specifically. Skills, capabilities is absolutely critical for to ensure success. This industry is growing by 15-20% per year. So ensuring that we have a constant flow of new talent in the industry is absolutely paramount. So I would like to answer this question in two different ways. First of all, internally at BlueFloat Energy, and second, as an industry, what are we doing as BlueFloat Energy to help the development of skills in the industry? Internally, it's about attracting talented people. Of course, talented people from the industry. We have been quite lucky to be able to attract experienced people in an industry that has a lack of sufficiently experienced people. But it's also about attracting people with experience in other industries which are relevant for offshore wind. And it's attracting talented people in the younger generation. It's about attracting people with a lot of potential, with this passion we're talking about, to learn and to develop themselves. And when you have a good set of professionals, a good team, what we call here the dream team, you create the environment for people to keep learning. The other element is to give every person the possibility to develop themselves, to get out of the comfort zone, to do new things they haven't done in the past. And I include myself there because I'd never been a CEO before BlueFloat Energy. So there's many ways in which I had to learn how to become an effective leader. And that's what makes a job attractive, is a job that is never the same every day, and where you have to define how to do new things over time. Of course, developing skills and capabilities for addressing those challenges it requires training, and we do training. But the best training is to do things on the job, and to give the people the means and the resources to address these challenges. So that's the internal perspective. From an external point of view, we also engage a lot with our partners in the supply chain to set the conditions for training people. That includes providing long-term visibility about what are going to be our needs. It includes signing partnerships with industry bodies so that we can share with them what are going to be the activities and the skills that would be needed to deliver our projects. We have signed partnerships with associations like ASIME in Spain, the Hunter Cooperative in Australia, for example, or ICN, and the list of examples is pretty wide across different geographies. So we like to partner with these industry bodies because they are very committed to help their associated companies consider this as an opportunity. It's a good way to maximize the local content. If you find good, effective, and cost-effective suppliers locally, that's the best way to reduce risks in your projects, but also to ensure that local stakeholders see a benefit in the development of offshore wind. So collaboration with these associations is very important, and of course collaboration with public entities like universities, like local councils, municipalities, and regional governments is also very important, because they also need to set the basis to create the right environment to house those people, to give them the local right environment for the families to live in. So it's a quite a wide range of activities which are needed, but all of them very local. And here's where our local teams are very critical, because they're on the field working with our local partners, identifying the right bodies and associations to work with.
Brilliant. And Carlos, ahead of today's recording, I asked you to set a question for our next guest. Can you let us have it, please?
Yeah. So I would like to go back to diversity as a key element for success in any company. And the question I will ask the next speaker will be, what does diversity mean for you and your organization, and what are your actions or plans to ensure diversity in your company?
Great. Well, that's I very much look forward to hearing the answer to that. I mean, diversity, of course, critically important for us all today. Carlos, you've been a great guest. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. So thank you, Carlos Martin, thank you, Carlos Martin, Chief Executive Officer at BlueFloat Energy, for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having us. It was a pleasure, a very good discussion, and looking forward to continue engaging with OGV in the future.
Brilliant, thank you. As always, feedback on today's episode, most welcome. Suggestions for which leaders of the energy transition we should feature next, ideas on the questions that we should be asking them are welcome too. So many of you get in touch through LinkedIn. Please keep that coming. Alternatively, drop me an email. It's Murray, that's MORAY, at anetconsulting.com. And just before I go, skills for the energy industry, of course, are essential for growth. And coming up on the 8th of November, we've got the Energy Transition Recruitment Fair. So if you are looking to expand your team or to make your career in the energy transition, come along. You'll find details online. It'll be great to see you there. 8th of November in Edinburgh. Thank you very much. Okay, right. I shall stop recording.